Hey YouTube, this is Crystal Perham. I am a broker, entrepreneur, real estate broker, wife, mother, and if you're just joining me, today is going to be all about story time of how I sold my very first house. And so yesterday got me thinking. I'm out actually showing property today on the coldest day of the year, might I add. My thermostat is actually reading -6 degrees. And it feels like -20 outside. I'm currently here at a house waiting for my buyer to show up, so I thought that we would get into some story time. I met with an agent, a brand new agent who's just come out of school yesterday, who's thinking about joining my firm, and she had asked me an awesome question. She had said to me, how did I get started? Like, what was my first transaction and how did I get my career going? So for those of you who haven't watched my other videos, I've been licensed since 2008. I was initially licensed in Las Vegas during one of the biggest market crashes of all time. I used to work for a CPA firm. Prior to that, I was a company controller for a trucking company, which I had eventually gotten laid off due to the recession. And I took the job at the CPA firm for less money, but I just wasn't happy, and I knew I needed a change. And why I chose real estate, I'll get into that later. So my buyer just showed up, so stay tuned. I'm going to pick this up in a minute. Hey everyone, so I'm back. We went to show that property. It was a condo. But back to story time. So this agent that I met with yesterday, I'm not sure where I left off, but this agent that I met with yesterday who's looking for a place had asked me a really good question. They had asked me, how I got my career off the ground and like how I made my first sale. And I thought that was a pretty good question, right? No one's really ever asked me that question before. And it got me thinking, because that story of how I sold my very first house ever is a really good story, I think, to people to hear if you are in real estate. So when I first got into the business, I just quit my job. I was at the CPA firm, I think earlier on I told you about that, and I just up and quit one day. And basically, I jumped into real estate with both feet, like not even thinking about it. I had not two nickels to rub together, as I mentioned. I had already taken a pay cut. Trying to get my camera right. I had already taken a pay cut from a previous, job that I had that I really loved. Like, I really, really loved that job. And so I had already taken a pay cut, and so I was hurting. I was hard up. It was 2008, major recession, lost my job, was out of work before I took the other job. So anyway, I just decided one day I was going to quit my job and become a realtor. And my gram was a realtor, so I had a little exposure to it, because when I was younger, she used to take me with her, and we'd go around and we'd go to her farm area. We put the little flags out in front of the house, and it was really cute, so she'd take me, and she'd have the little flags with her business card on it for 4th of July, and we'd go around her neighborhoods, and I would help put them in. Anyway, I didn't have enough exposure to the business, I think, that one should have, right? Because you really have no idea what you're getting into. And I got in, and I had no idea what I was doing. So the first brokerage that I talked to was Coldwell Banker. And in my mind, I just wanted to find a brokerage who would take me, right? I was thinking that I was the issue because I was brand new and they were going to have to train me and nobody would want me. But that in this business is anything but the case. Most real estate agents, when they first come in, don't realize that you get the decision of what brokerage you want to hang your license at, and almost every brokerage will take you. Like they have no problem taking a new agent, training you, because no one ever knows if you're going to be the best, the next best successful agent. So that's just kind of how real estate operates. So I had joined Coldwell Banker, and I had no idea like what I was doing, right? I had no clue what the heck I was doing, what I was supposed to be doing. All I knew is that, okay, I signed on with this brokerage. I'm showing up to the office every day, and I'm showing up, and I just was like trying to learn whatever I could, right? Because you want to do well. I didn't have a lot of room for error. As I mentioned, I had not 2 nickels to rub together. And so I just kind of kept showing up at the office and learning what I could. And there were some people in the office that were very helpful, and then there were a lot of people in the office that weren't. My mentor being the number one person who I think wasn't that helpful, and that's a story for another day. It was 2008, so there was a lot of real estate agents that were hanging around the office, but they were miserable. They were miserable, right? I mean, imagine the market crashes. You don't really, know, what you're going to do if this has been your livelihood for all these years, right? So my mentor was pretty miserable. She wasn't much help. But anyway, so one night I'm at the office late, and it's probably like 5:36, and all of a sudden they come around with the list of expireds, and they're like, okay, hit the phones. Now, mind you, this is 2008, right? And as we've seen technology grow, it has grown so fast. So to think about 2008, we didn't have Zillow. Zillow was not a thing. Realtor.com had just started to come out, but they were like, oh, I don't know why she's taking this, so I'm going to follow my buyer, because my buyer just decided she's going to flip and take a left, which my GPS is not telling me that. But, oh, I guess it corrected itself. Sorry, you guys. So, I don't remember where I was. Oh, so anyway, I was hanging around. They come around with the list of expireds. Back then, we didn't have any of it. We didn't have Zillow. We didn't have Realtor.com. We didn't have any of those like lead generation websites. We did things the old school way, right? Like, it was all about who you know, how many contacts you met, how many people knew you, getting out there, pounding the pavement, holding open houses, door knocking, all the old school stuff. So they came around the office that day with the list of expired listings for that day, which, every day we had so many expireds. I mean, nothing was selling. It was 2008 in Las Vegas. So I started hitting the phones, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Like, I didn't know what I was saying to these people. I had some cold calling type sales jobs, telemarketing jobs prior to that. So I did have a little experience on the phones, but let's face it, I don't think anybody wakes up every day and says, I love cold calling. And if you do, definitely comment in the section below, because I would love to hear about how you love cold calling, right? Because I would love to know, I guess, what you find awesome about it and how you have learned to love it. So anyway, I started calling these expireds, and I got who will end up being my first client ever on that phone call. And he was really rude, right? We're going to keep him anonymous, and for the sake of this video, we're going to name him Fred. But Fred was pretty rude. So basically, I called Fred. Fred was rude. Fred was giving me a bunch of pushback. I pushed back some and was not going to take no for an answer, because for me, I had no room for failure, right? Like, I had only been in real estate for probably a couple days at that point, but I had no room for failure. I did not have long. And part of that is because going back to my video that's I'll link in the description box below on costs and expenses of becoming a licensed real estate agent, I never knew about the Realtors Board until I was already signed with Coldwell Banker, not knowing that that was going to be like so expensive. I think I want to say it was altogether around $1,500 to get signed up with the Realtors Board. I mean, that was everything. That was my super and my super key. They took a deposit for my super key with me promising to give it back. All those things, right? All right, so I'm pulling up to the next house. I'm gonna pick this video up when I get back from showing my buyer, so stay tuned. All right, I'm back. So I don't remember where I left off. I'm heading to my last property of the day right now. And so basically, I was at Coldwell Banker. I didn't have a clue as to what the heck I was doing. And I just kind of did whatever they told me. So I think I was telling you guys about how, you know, they came in with the expired. Oh, I was talking about my client. So this guy was pretty rude. I gave him some pushback, and he finally says, fine, if you want to take the listing at this price, you can have it. And that price was insane. Like, I was like, okay, and I'm all excited, right? Because I'm sitting there thinking that I'm getting a possible $700,000 listing. And so then I asked the guy, I asked Fred, hey Fred, so like when can I come by and see it? And Fred basically says to me, I'm home now. I'm like, what? Okay. It's like 7 p.m. at this point. It's dark out. I was like in my mid-20s. I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea like about real estate. I have no idea if this guy is a psycho killer. But I was like, okay, I'm on my way. So I literally hung up the phone and grabbed my bag and ran over there. No presentation, no nothing, no nada. No idea what I'm doing. And I just go over there, I knock on the door, and I'm freaking out inside, right? Because I don't know if this guy is like a total nut or what. So anyway, I'm freaking out inside. I knock on the door and I'm pretending to be super confident, like I've been doing this a billion years. And I go in, and I was fine, by the way. He wasn't a crazy killer. Although he was crazy, that's a story for another video. But he wasn't, you know, rude or anything like that. He might have been a little flirty once he met me or whatever. I just bypassed that, right? Like, it just was like, whatever. But anyway, so I leave there. He takes me around, and I leave there with this listing that is so overpriced. It was so overpriced. It was like absolutely ridiculous, like how much money he said he wanted for this house. And I just was like, all I knew is that when I was sitting there at the office, all I kept hearing from everybody was, get the listing, get the listing, get the listing. Listings bring buyers. Just get the listing. Who cares if it ever sells? Just get the listing. That's how you're going to get the money. So I was like, okay, I got the listing. Okay, so I'm like, which is insane, right? Because it's like, in most cases, so that client, Fred, knew that I was never going to get $750-something thousand for his listing. Right, I still walking through and remembering walking through that house, which I'll never forget because it's the first house you ever walk through, right? I still in the back of my mind have no idea how the bank even allowed him to borrow that much money against the property. I will never understand. I will just never understand that. Like, anyway, so he never was really, you know, hammering for an answer of why I couldn't get it sold or why we didn't have any showings, because he knew as well as I did that he was never going to get that price. It was what I found out later on was that it was like a last ditch effort. He hadn't been making mortgage payments. It would have been a short sale, and it was a last ditch effort to see if somebody as crazy as he is was going to come in and pay that price for that house. So anyway, going forward, about a week later, after I take the listing, I go over, I get the sign installed, I take the listing agreement, and we get all the paperwork together, and it goes live in the MLS. And about a week later, I get a call from Fred. Now, mind you, Fred already told me that he was not making his mortgage payments. He was not doing this or that. He was not paying. He was not planning on getting caught up with the bank, whatever. They were gonna come and take the house. So about a week later, Fred calls me, and Fred is like, I got $400,000 cash and I need to buy something. I just was dumbfounded. I was like, say what? Like, you're losing your property. And that's the crazy things that were totally happening in Las Vegas in 2008, right? Those are the crazy things that were happening. So anyway, he calls me up. He's got cash. He's going to buy. Now, I really don't know this guy that well. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, this guy is nuts. Like, this guy is crazy. I don't know what to believe. He might have the money. He might not have the money. And now in hindsight, what I know now, I would have normally gotten proof of funds, right? To verify, show me you have that money, right? Before we go pounding pavement. But I was so young and so hungry and just needed to make a sale. I didn't even question it. I just was like, all right, let's go look at houses. Now, I really don't know this guy. And now we're out looking at houses, and we go into one house and it's foreclosed, and there is no lights. All the windows have been broken and boarded up. It is pitch black in this house, and I'm going in this house with this guy who seemed a little crazy, but he seemed all right. It seemed like you wouldn't want to cross him, but as long as you flattered him a little bit, he would be fine. So we go in this house. I cannot see anything. We're going through with flashlights, and we realize that the prior owner kicked the out of this house. Kicked the crap out of this house. I mean, everything about this house was broken. Just broken. And you could tell that the bones were there, and it could have been a beautiful house, right? But they kicked the crap out of it. And that was true for so many homes in Las Vegas. People losing their homes and getting mad about being in foreclosure and losing their places and all of that. So long story short, we go through, and he says to me, now this house is priced at like $270, $280 at the time. Might even have been $300. It was way more than what we ended up paying. But he says to me, I want to make an offer at $199. And right there, I'm defeated. I'm like, oh, come on. Are you kidding me? It was foreclosed. So I was like, and I had no room to be like, I won't do that. At that time, I was like, all right, let's write it up, you know? And in the back of my mind, I'm giggling to myself now, because I definitely was thinking back then also, yeah, let's write it up, even if you don't get it for the sake of writing it up, because I probably should learn how to do that, right? Remember, I'd only been a real estate agent for probably like 10 days at this point. So there's a lot that I was learning and still trying to figure out what to know. So anyway, we write up the offer. So I scramble back to the office. I'm freaking out. I'm just like, somebody help me. Somebody help me. I got to write an offer. Quick. I need somebody to help me right now. And so I get the help. We write up the offer. I learn how to do all the bank addendums and all that stuff. And we submit it into the listing agent. And the listing agent gets back to me a couple days later and says that they accepted our offer. I was like, no way. But of course, course, as excited as I was for that, he still wanted an inspection. We still had to get through the whole process. But we had scheduled to close it like 10 days after our offer was accepted. We were going to do a short inspection and then go right into closing. So that was pretty awesome. But then, of course, we went through the home inspection, and he went back and he wanted more money off. And I was thinking, like, I don't think they're going to give you any more money off. And they didn't. They basically said no at the $199, take it or leave it. So we ended up closing it, and we closed it at $199. So the point of this story, for all the real estate agents who have made it this far through this story with me, my point is, is number one, that sale started with doing something that I don't really love to do, but it's because it was all I knew. It was all I was told to do, and I just did what they told me to do. Number two, most real estate agents who are experienced in this market or in this business would be like, Fred's out of his mind. Like, Fred's losing his house. Fred ain't gonna buy anything, right? There are some agents who would be like, initially, I would never take that listing at that higher price, because of course we all want to sell our listings. Nobody wants to take a listing that's so over the top than what you really can get for it, right? Because it's a waste of time and money. But it ended up working out for me because I didn't know any better. And I think that sometimes being naive in this business can make you the most successful, because you're just doing what you're told. You don't know. You don't know any better. You don't know what's good, what's bad. You don't know. You have nothing to compare it to, right? So the other part about this that I will say is, you just never know, whether it's a cold call, a conversation at a convenience store, a conversation with the neighbor. You never know by putting yourself out there what you may get back, right? So that was my first sale. And I remember, being so relieved, because part of that video all about the cost of getting licensed to be a real estate agent, part of that video that I made, you can find down in my channel, that's all those expenses I didn't know, right? So I started with Coldwell Banker, and when I got licensed, no one had ever told me about the real estate board. No one. And in Las Vegas, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier in this video or in another video, it was $1,500 to join the Realtors board in MLS and get my super key. And they used to take a deposit to get the old style super keypad and all this stuff, right? So I had to shell out like $1,500 right out the gate. And Coldwell Banker on top of that they were gouging me. They were gouging me. They were taking advantage of the fact that I was new. My mentor, they were taking a lot. My mentor was getting a piece. They had a franchise fee, and that'll lead me into another video about just when you're joining a brokerage, know where all your dollars and cents go. But I hope that this video helps somebody out there, or inspires somebody, right? Because that phone call, that initial phone call when I called Fred, he was pretty rude and he did not want to talk to me, and I made a client out of him, right? Like by not taking no for an answer, he was like, yeah, I'm all set. That was his first thing. And he was a pretty rough around the edges guy. And so when I first called him, I definitely had to have my objection handling. He did not want to speak with me. And by the end of the time we hung up the phone, yes, I went over there last minute with no preparation. I had no idea if the guy was a nut. I mean, it just was a little different back then. Now we have all these ways of internet to look people up and stuff. But I went over there. I took that chance. I dealt with somebody who was kind of moody, and it ended up being a win right? And I think what part of why I did well back then, even in the worst market of all time, was I was not very quick to take no for an answer. And I was always on point with my follow-up. You know, I made sure that, you know, I was following up with those people, and anybody that I had made contact with, that I was communicating with and staying in touch with. And I think that that's one of the things that really did make me successful in the beginning. Even in a bad market, I sold like 20 homes my first year. Granted, they were really low price, but I did what I had to do, right? And so that's my video. That is how I got my first sale and how I was able to afford to pay for the Realtors board. And you need to know that that's not the norm, right? Like, I consider that a huge part being luck. Like, I lucked out, right? Like, I happened to find someone who ended up turning around and having cash and buying something anyway. But the point, I think, goes back to, you just really never know. You never really know. Like, you just don't. You don't know when that conversation, that innocent conversation, or maybe that very intentional conversation, is going to turn into something more. So that's my story for today. Thanks for riding along with me while we show houses again on the coldest day of the year. I'm on my way to house number 3, and it'll be my final for today, and then I'm going to go home and cut this video so you guys can watch it. All right, I will talk to you soon. See you on the flip side.